The third one was abolish the rights of inheritance. Bible says a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Karl Marx wanted to abolish the rights of inheritance. See, if God's for it, he's against it. Number 4, confiscate property rights. Number 5, a central bank. Remember, love of money, root of all evil. 1913, we got a creature from Jeckyll Island, Georgia, called the Federal Reserve. You ought to read that book and find the history behind the Federal Reserve. Nothing federal about it, and there are no reserves. It's no more federal than the Federal Express or federal rifle shells. Okay. Love of money, root of all evil. The Bible says the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You see, the rich folks wanted to figure out a way to get all of the money. They would like everybody in debt to them, so that when you work, part of your money goes to them, even though they didn't do the work. You did the work, but they get part of the money. That's how debt works, isn't it? If you borrow money for a house or a car, well, then you work to pay for, to give some of it away. Interesting. For centuries, the alchemists sought for ways to turn lead into gold. They failed. But the bankers discovered a way to do it. Start wars and finance both sides. Interesting. After the lead stops flying, the gold rolls in as interest payments on the national debt. Did you know during World War II, U.S. debt rose almost 600%, Japanese debt rose 1,300%, French debt rose almost 600%, Canadian debt rose 400%. Debt to who? Who do we owe this money to? What's the national debt now? Like 17 trillion when they're really honest and put all the numbers on the table? Who do we owe this money to? Every one of you is carrying in your wallet or your purse evidence of our debt. You want to see it? This is not a $5 bill. This is a debt note. This is proof of our debt. Federal Reserve note. This is not money, folks. That'd take a long time to explain all that, but the national debt is absolutely staggering. See, Nehemiah said, we have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and upon our lands and vineyards, and lo, we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants. I'm afraid we've got our sons and grandsons and great-grandsons in debt already right now, folks. Here's to give you a little bit of the history of the love of money and how this ties in. Okay? In 1776, we fought a war with England and gained independence from England and from the Bank of England. Only Congress had power to coin money. Jefferson warned if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, by the way, Federal Reserves are private banks. Okay? First by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. In 1792, Alexander Hamilton established a 20-year charter with the Bank of England. Big mistake, Alex. In 1812, renewal was denied and war broke out. England said, okay, charter's up, we want the colonies back. That's what the War of 1812 was really about. Okay? 1833, Andrew Jackson removed all money from the chartered banks and put them into state banks. In 1836, the rich men, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, these kind of guys, had Mexico invade Texas, started a war to punish America for not keeping their money in his banks. In 1861, these same rich men helped create the Civil War to disrupt the economy. They wanted to create debt and get their power back. See, they have power when everybody's in debt to them. They love it when Congress issues more money because they just print it and it's more debt. In 1861, the Industrial Revolution created great wealth in the hands of a few. You ought to read the book, The Robber Barons, for more on that. In 1907, banker J.P. Morgan deliberately created the financial panic to promote the idea of a central bank. In 1912, the communist, Marxist, Colonel House, who was Wilson's alter ego, he was in the Wilson administration, he wrote a book called Philip Drew, Administrator, to explain his conspiracy to establish a central bank and create a progressive income tax. 1913, Federal Reserve Act was passed and Federal Income Tax Act was passed. December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, the Federal Reserve Act passed. Then the 16th Amendment was passed. Now this is the greatest hoax in history. All the senators had gone home. This is Christmas. Colonel House walks in, announces to practically an empty Senate, the 16th Amendment has passed. Now when an amendment passes, all the states have to ratify it. When this 16th Amendment to allow for the income tax went out to all the different states, almost every state didn't even vote on it. When it came up for issue, they said, this is unconstitutional. We passed. We're not going to vote on it. So when they said passed, that didn't mean they agreed. That means they didn't want to vote on it. 16th Amendment was never ratified. The law that never was. Okay? That's a long, interesting story. Anyway, in 1916, Wilson, reflecting on the Federal Reserve Act, said, I have unwittingly ruined my country. From 1920 to 1929, the bankers increased the money supply by 62% to create the Roaring Twenties and brought people into the stock market. October 1929, the bankers called in their loans and sent the economy into the Great Depression. This was intentionally done. And then helped create the New Deal programs where they could loan the government money to rescue the economy. And guess who we're in debt to? Same guys. In June 1932, Congressman Louis McFadden gave his powerful speech to Congress, spelling out who had caused the Depression. On the third try, they finally had him assassinated. Congressman Louis McFadden. There was also, Lindbergh was very much outspoken against the banking system, and he ended up getting his baby kidnapped and murdered because of this same issue. Okay? 1933, the government debt to the bankers began to grow steadily. Millions readily accepted a Social Security number, which, by the way, is voluntary, and I don't have one. Okay? The rich men then tricked people into getting a Social Security number in order to get their benefits from the government. As usual, they created a crisis, the Depression, to encourage compliance. Here's an original Social Security card. Look what it says. Not for identification. New ones, you have to have for identification for just about everything, don't you? Look, if anybody asks for your Social Security number, just say, it's none of your business. I applied for insurance, and they said, for life insurance. And they said, oh, you don't have a Social Security number. Can't have insurance. I wrote them a letter. I said, I'd like insurance. Please insure me. They said, no, not without a Social Security number. So we're suing them for big bucks for discriminating against me. That should come to a head in the next couple of weeks. Call me and I'll let you know how it turns out. I might be able to fly all of you down to Florida to see our place. Okay? Here's go to the local post office and pick up a draft notice for you kids, selective service. Look what it says here. If you have a Social Security number, it is mandatory you include this information. If you don't have one, leave this block blank. It is not mandatory to have a Social Security number. They want you to think it is, but it is totally voluntary. What happened, we traded our real money, which is silver and gold, for worthless paper. Real soon, those who control the real money will require all transactions to be controlled electronically by an embedded chip. I have in my wallet a $5 Federal Reserve note from 1928. Very interesting reading. Look what it says here. Redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury, or in gold or lawful money at any Federal Reserve Bank. What are they telling me? I can trade this in for gold, or I can trade it in for lawful money. Isn't that what it says? You mean this is not lawful money? No, this is a Federal Reserve note. This is a debt note. This is not money. We've got a whole generation now who grows up thinking this is money, and it is not money, folks. It is a note. It's a debt note. That would be a long, interesting study. Also, you may want to get into. Then in 1933, a couple of years after this was issued, President Roosevelt declared to Congress of Governors that a national state of emergency existed. The Great Depression was going on. So the governors voted unanimously to give the president emergency power to wage war on the economy. These powers would not be available under normal constitutional process. March 1933, Congress voted to give the President of the United States and to the Secretary of the Treasury the emergency powers sanctioned to wage war through executive orders. Abraham Lincoln issued the first executive order to bring troops into the South. And by the way, I love my country, but the wrong side won that war. That war was not about slavery. That war was about states' rights. That's another long, interesting story. But in 1933, Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917 was amended to include the citizens of the United States. By the way, capital U, capital S, you don't want to be a citizen of that one. You want to be a citizen of the small u, capital S. That's another long, interesting story. Okay? By and through their ability to own gold and silver as an enemy of the United States. In 1933, they said, if you own gold, you're an enemy of the country. Everybody turned their gold in to the government, 1933. Then in 1934, this note was issued, which I have in my collection at home. It says right here, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. That's still not lawful money, folks. It's fraudulent. See, the note is evidence of debt, not money. The Coinage Act of 1792, which has never been revoked, defines a dollar as 25.8 grains of gold or 412 grains of silver. That's why a silver dollar was always the same size. It had to be 90% silver and had to weigh a certain amount. And it was a real lawful dollar. Here's the new euro currency. European Common Market. Interesting. Notice the woman riding on the beast here in both the coins and the dollars. Revelation 17. He carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast has 7 heads and 10 horns on the European currency. Interesting. Here's the Bank of England 10-pound note with Charles Darwin's picture on there. Now that's interesting. If you want to study more about the Federal Reserve, you ought to get that book on the horns of the beast. To see more about the money issue, you can call, our ministry can order it for you. You can get it through us, or you can get it right there off this phone number on the screen. Or get this one to see how the Rockefeller family's been involved in all of this. You know, Khrushchev used to brag that he got all of his secrets from Rockefeller's CIA. By the way, the CIA was not a government organization. It was a private organization. Long story there. Basically, they took away our gold and gave us paper. Federal Reserve notes. Next, they're going to take away the paper and give us plastic, where you have to have a record of the transaction. There's no record of a paper transaction. Now, with computers, there can be a record of every transaction that's made. Finally, they're going to take away the plastic and put a mark in the hand or forehead. Coming soon. In Pensacola, a couple years ago, they had a festival. Cash was not allowed. You could not spend money, or Federal Reserve notes. You had to have a card. Interesting. And we could talk a long time about the mark of the beast, but you might want to get a hold of Carl Sanders, a friend of mine in Arkansas, Mountain View, Arkansas. He's one of the guys who helped develop the microchip. And now he travels and speaks about the dangers of the microchip in the future of the world, how that's going to be probably the mark of the beast or something similar to that. You may also want to get a hold of Dean Martin, a friend of mine in Pensacola. How'd you like to have a name like that? Dean Martin. But that's his name. He's a great guy. He has a lot of information and has a demonstration he puts on with the microchip to let people know where the technology is going, okay? The Bible says in Revelation chapter 13, he causeth all, talking about Satan, he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in the forehead. This was prophesied 2,000 years ago. And he said, without the mark you cannot buy or sell. Revelation 14, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone. Don't receive the mark. You know, I don't think there's going to be a time, preacher, when we can just stand up and take a stand against the mark. I think it's going to be a slow, gradual choking process where all of a sudden certain stores just, you don't have a mark, I'm sorry, you don't buy here. You're just gradually going to phase out the Christians who refuse this mark. It's not going to be a big glorious deal where you get to stand up. You're just slowly going to starve to death. I don't know, but I suspect that's what's coming. I know in Washington, D.C., you cannot ride the bus or the transit system unless you have a card in your wallet which has a microchip embedded in it. And you don't even take it out of your wallet. You step up on the bus and you walk through this little archway and automatically deducts the fare from your card. There are places where you can recharge your card all around the city. But if you don't have a card, you don't ride the bus. And it will get to the point where if you don't have a chip in your hand or your forehead, you don't go in the store. Or you don't buy or sell. Mark my words, that's what the Bible prophesied. It's coming, folks, to a city near you. They now have Speed Pass, where you can have this little chip, little microchip. You put it on your key ring, you walk up to get gas, you touch the pump, you fill it up, and you drive off. How many have seen those? I've seen several of you in the church that already have them, okay? Not that it's good or bad, I'm just saying it's probably the forerunner. This is headed that way, folks, all right? Microchips are very fascinating. The technology is incredible what's happened in the last 20 years here with this microchip technology. They now have these little tiny chips. Hitachi Corporation, just a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, came out with the Mu chip, 1/2 millimeter, the size of a period on a piece of paper. That can hold 128 bits of information. Not much, but it's enough to give you a number by which you can be identified. They can put these chips into a piece of paper, and every single item will have a number, and it's headed to an electronic system. What's going to happen in the future? You walk into the grocery store, you gather up everything you want, and you push the cart outside, and there are no checkouts. It's automatically deducted from your account. But in order to do that, you will have to have a chip. Well, that's interesting. That's also going to make it kind of easy to track people that the government's looking for, isn't it? They always create a crisis to get people to accept this new idea. That's how the Social Security got in. Mondex Corporation, Mon for monetary and Dex for Dexter. Monetary means pertaining to money. Dexter means belonging to or located on the right hand. MasterCard has 51% ownership of Mondex. One of the folks from Mondex, Robin Kelly, said, "This is the final stage in becoming a global reality," said Robin Kelly of Mondex International. "With MasterCard's backing, there's nothing to stop Mondex from becoming the global standard." Watch for smart cards, okay? They use the SET technology, which stands for Secure Electronic Transaction. By the way, Set is the Egyptian god of evil. The SET mark. AT&T and Lucent Technologies purchased the franchise from Mondex USA. Their logo is the symbol of the solar serpent, or the red dragon, who is Satan. That's Lucifer Technologies, Lucent Technologies. Lucent is compound of Lucifer Enterprises. They seem to be quite flagrant in naming their products Styx, S-T-Y-X. That's a river in Hades. Janus, the two-faced god. Inferno, promoted with a quote from the Inferno, a story about Lucifer in the bowels of hell. This company deliberately, is what I heard, chose to move their offices to 666 Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. That's what this fellow told me on this website. And I saw a picture of the building, and it was. Now, they may have moved since then.